Selena and Rutak had talked for a long time. She learned much about his people's culture and some things about Wapru that she, an outsider, simply had no way of knowing. Or she knew that Wapru was an industrial hub due to its orbital ring. She did not know that the planet itself grew surplus foodstuffs for export from many small vertical farming installations, though there were a few megafarms consisting of huge towers, small cities in their sheer size. They were few and far between. Rutak had explained that working aboard the ring was no different than anywhere else that held a commute. While living on the structure was possible, he said that the air there always smelled of cleaning agents and that living spaces were cramped and small, unless you were very wealthy. He worked as a machine operator for a dedicated manufacturing processing facility that produced replacement magnetic resonance coils for civilian-grade Starship engines. The company, Primer Magnetometrics, was a small one, only making about 100 such units a day. She learned that his species had evolved from obligate carnivorous pack hunters and formed close-knit communities and families. The rise and discovery of agriculture allowed their diets to change slightly, allowing them the consumption of single plants such as berries and small amounts of herbs. Rutak was on what his species called, loosely translated, a walkabout, a period of time for self-discovery and learning of the world without pack support, except for initial gifts from family and friends. Historically, it was a steed or a very strong pack animal, and rations for both for a few days. Now it was a small personal vehicle and credits. In Rutak's case, his steed was the hoverbike he had. In turn, Selena told him of her youth and of the accident that took her father and left her needing so many organs and replacements, leaving her growth quite stunted. How her Uncle Robert had saved her life using whatever he could get his hands on, even writing a few combat medical journals about it. That everyone who served under her father, a highly decorated ODST from before first contact, paid for all of her medical procedures until they could no longer do so because of Captain's orders. Now she grew up in a modest home in Louisiana, a state that belonged to a superpower nation from before a unified Earth. Now it belonged to a district beholden to the United Nations of Terror. Robert Arios, who was not her uncle by blood but by bonds, had stayed in the military to make sure she, his niece, had been taken care of. That her mother, Renee, had been a theoretical astrophysicist and met her father at a local bar when he was on leave. She had been enamored with the ugliest jarhead ever with the biggest, prettiest brain. As well as her time in college, learning about prosthetic wear and xenobiology, already knowing a bit about wetware due to her own tragic circumstances, as well as the embarrassing week-long Mardi Gras party which resulted in her having lost her right arm for a few days, before someone was kind enough to return it to her. Somehow, someone had gotten her arm to play the old vintage video game Doom in an upscaled resolution, with her hand as the controlling interface. Finally, she had ended her tale with her desire to help people, and that humanity, unlike the galaxy at large, viewed prosthetic replacement as a right, as it had been part of their history some 1600 years, longer than any other species in the galaxy. Their talk had lasted so long together that they had both ordered another meal, ending on a happy note after Selena had wrangled him into her daily vidmail to her mother, and then exchanging contact information. Parting separate ways after Rutak had dropped her off back at her home, an experience altogether, she ended on a happy note. Rutak had a grand time talking to that small human. It had been more than a little awkward with that vidmail, but he chalked it up to humans being humans, though he had only met the one. He'd been shocked to learn that her uncle by arms was the famed human Robert Christian Arios, who was going to be given an Alliance Award for military combat aid for helping friend and foe alike. He was the first human to ever receive a combat award from the Galactic Council Alliance. As he rode to his favourite bar planetside that served his kind, he wondered what his fellow road warriors would think of the tiny human. He knew some of them needed prosthetic work done, and their particular replacements were on the expensive side and mostly legal. Finally arriving at the Slow Burn Cafe, he parked his hoverbike and threw it into its power save mode function. Walking in, and waving to his group of buddies, he went straight to the bar. Ordering his usual, a house blend of carbonated water and very sweet berry juice high in phosphoric acid. Sipping at the mild intoxicant, and opening a tab for the night, he went to his friends at a billiards table. "You'll never guess who I was talking to today," he said to them. York was in a bit of a bind. He was in his private home study in the majestic foothills just outside of Talvi. His estate was well kept and well guarded. Sipping at the tall glass of water that held dissolved melatonin at a very strong dosage of 50 milligrams, helped him relax as he looked at the severed head of one of his most trusted informants. The head had been in a sealed and refrigerated box, that had been delivered by a no-name punk who had been given a paltry sum of credits with simple directions. Georg had sent Noir to act as a simple Nimian worker and told to lay low, to be an insect on the wall, as it were. Noir was on the outskirts of the system, on the furthest mining moon controlled by a rival syndicate. Ahead in front of him was a simple declaration. War was coming. Etgar looked at the truly refined document in front of him. Mostly unchanged from when he sent it to the human, it laid out clear expectations for them both, exceptions thereof, liabilities, and so forth. It was a relatively solid document. The summary of it was that if any of his workers were injured while on shift, Selena would be the sole prosthetist after initial wetware installation, unless she was able to perform such procedures as well as all required upkeep work. Such work was to be done at a somewhat modest 4.75% discount of her usual costs. The contract would remain in perpetuity. However, every solar rotation, renegotiation of terms could be brought forth. If nothing could be agreed upon, the contract would remain unchanged, rather than terminated. After a lengthy vid call with his accountant, he told him to accept it, and get it filled with the local trading guilds to make everything legal. Hal sighed as he looked at the naked form of his life partner. He could not help but admire his mate's physique, the way his muscles contorted, his personality, and his simple joviality. Hal took a deep breath of the vaporizer he held in his hand, held it in his 4 lungs, and exhaled quietly. Perhaps not quietly enough. "You told me you quit," came the quiet voice of his lover. "I'm worried, love," he said to him. "I'm very worried." Hal took another long drag of the vaporizer, letting it out slowly as well. "There's so much I can't tell you, and I'm going to be in the middle of it all. I need you to go to your brother's place, the one-out system over in Globety Space." "That's so far." "Damn it, Georg. The syndicates are moving against each other." He turned to face his life partner. "I'm going to be fighting against them, and they know things. I can't lose you, okay? I can't lose you." Hal broke down sobbing into the arms of his lover. "I can't lose you,"